My name is Dave Obudzinski. I'm the president of the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain. Welcome this evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you and thank you all for being with us and experiencing what we call meeting number 2 in a series of 3 that take place each year, where we identify an issue in our community, we examine and educate ourselves about that issue, and we work towards selecting an agency that will help us address that issue by ultimately awarding a $10,000 grant in our Catalyst program. Now, before we start, who is joining us for the first time as a member or a guest? Raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. Many of these folks have a yellow dot on their name tag. Yes, we tag people here, so be careful. Be careful. So make an extra effort as Catalyst members if you can to reach out to them during the evening to say hello and answer any questions that they may have. I believe it's yellow and green dots, right? Green are new members, yellow are visitors. I think I'm getting the color coding down. So.
Yellow, green are members that are here for the first time.
Okay, there we go.
We like to keep it easier.
So thank you and welcome everybody for being part of the Catalyst Giving Circle family, whether you've been with us for 16 years or are here for the first time. And maybe even some of our speakers and organizations might become interested in becoming members in future years. The Community Foundation of Greater New Britain is proud to play a leadership role in our area in this way, and we're really pleased with those people who host us at these meetings. And once again, a big thanks to Stanley Black & Decker and especially Jay Fitzpatrick, the food service manager, and his staff with us here today for taking such good care of us. We do have one housekeeping issue related to the refreshments. At 6:30, the beer and wine service will begin to disappear. So I'm just telling you, for timing purposes, you may want to stand up at a particular point and reload. Just saying. I'd also like to acknowledge the Catalyst Steering Committee who worked behind the scenes during the year to bring this program together. Will the members of the Steering Committee please stand so that we can recognize you? And if anybody has an interest in becoming part of the Steering Committee, just let any of us on staff know. And thank you all to all of our members for joining us this evening, whether it's your first year or more. We really appreciate you being part of this. Each of you contribute to a pool of funds to help make a difference and lifts up our community through exceptional work of the groups that work around us. And the great news is that Catalyst is in its 16th year and continues to grow in popularity. This has been a record-breaking year with, are we at 68 now as of this afternoon? We had 2 more join this afternoon, 68 members. And more than 50% of you are new or returning members, and we're thrilled to have you on our team. So thank you. We are successful in meeting our community needs when we partner with those who help us to get there. And you did. And one of the goals that we put out there during our recruitment season for membership this year was a goal to bring our membership level up to a particular point that would allow us to increase the grant level in the future. Your collective involvement this year will allow us to do just that. And at our next and final meeting of this year on November 8th, we will be able to announce what our new grant level will be in 2019. I've got to have some drama, right? So we'll stretch it out a little bit. So thank you to everybody for helping us to achieve that goal and helping us get to that point, because we really did want to, after 16 years, move that level up as much as we could, and your support is allowing us to do that. So at this point, it is my pleasure to invite Corey Holmes, a member of our Catalyst Steering Committee, a member of our Board of Directors of the Community Foundation, who is going to take us through and explain tonight's program. Corey, thank you.
Good evening, and feel free to go up and replenish. Thank you. Won't be a problem. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. At our last meeting in June, Dr. John Malteni, Director of Institute of Autism and Behavioral Studies at the University of St. Joseph, provided an overview on the topic for us. Based on his presentation, a request for proposals was developed that focused on services for adolescents and young adults ages 14 through 21 with autism spectrum disorder and the needs of their families. You received a copy of this RFP, which is in your packet on the table, so if you want to look at that more closely, it is on your table. We received 5 proposals in response to the RFP, and tonight we have representatives from the 3 finalists. These were chosen by the steering committee, and we felt that these were the strongest proposals and the ones that fit our criteria the best. So for now, I'd like to invite Christine Brummer from the steering committee, who will introduce our presenters this evening.
Thank you, Corey, and good evening, everyone. For this portion of the program, each presenter will have up to 15 minutes to inform you about his or her proposal and the use of the Catalyst Fund grant to address the topic of workforce of the future. After each presentation, there will be time for presenters to answer any questions that you might have. Following all 3 presentations, it will take a few more minutes for any additional questions. Please stand when you are asking your question, and I will try to repeat it in the microphone to ensure that everyone hears it. Tonight, we will not vote on our final selection, but rather at our final meeting on November 8th. And something new we're doing beginning tonight is taping the presentation so anyone who could not be here will still have a chance to hear from our finalists. Paradigm, a local nonprofit and a CFGNB grantee, has been hired to do that for us tonight. Paradigm Academy provides hands-on STEAM programs that combine the arts, technology, and community engagement. Thanks to Dwayne Pierce, Executive Director, for being here with us tonight. Is Dwayne here? Yes, here, there you go, thanks. And now I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Leslie Simoes, Executive Director of Autism Services and Resources Connecticut, to speak about vocational assessment and training series for individuals with ASD for the ages of 14 through 21. ASR will also host 4 trainings for families of young adults on the autism spectrum to assist in acquiring and maintaining a job in all of our 4 towns. Remember, following the presentation, there will be an area for questions.
Hope I pronounced your name correctly.
All right, thank you.
I'm sitting at the table with the other presenters, and we were all taking, sort of short sticks. But I guess I got the shortest one, so I'll go first. So thank you for having me. My name is Leslie Simoes, and I'm Executive Director of Autism Services and Resources Connecticut, or we call ourselves ASRC for short. We were founded in 1997, and we've grown to become Connecticut's statewide premier advocacy training and family support organization for individuals with autism spectrum disorders, or ASD, and their families. Our mission is to promote lifelong access to opportunities for individuals with ASD with the goal of being fully included, participating members of their communities. We provide advocacy, public awareness, education, and training on all aspects of the autism spectrum disorders. Together with our families, we walk the daily journey of living with autism. Unfortunately, that daily journey includes some very stark realities. The state of Connecticut is one of the last states in the country that still uses a mental retardation IQ requirement in order to be eligible for state services, meaning that only individuals with an IQ of 69 or lower can receive state services. Autism spectrum is vast ranging from folks with high support needs and lower IQs to low support needs and normal to high IQs. Actually, the CDC estimates that 44% of those on the spectrum have IQs of 70 or higher. This outdated eligibility statute leaves thousands of individuals with ASD no service when they age out of school. Those with IQs of 69 or lower are eligible for Department of Developmental Services support, but this support system does not have adequate funding to support the individuals presently being served, as well as those entering the system. And while ASRC is fighting to change the system, at present there's no political will to invest resources in this population, leaving thousands with no hope for a future. The few services that do exist for folks 70 with IQs of 70 or higher are scarce, and these services are expensive private pay services. The autism prevalence has risen. The CDC now estimates the prevalence as 1 in 49. The United States is now experiencing a surge of young people with ASD transitioning to adulthood. Based on U.S. Census data, over 500,000 youth with ASD will turn 18 over the next decade. Unfortunately, they are entering a health and service system that is largely unprepared for them. And these statistics are one of the many reasons why ASRC applied for this grant, which is to assist young adults on the spectrum with critical vocational support before they exit the school system. So our proposal initiates a vocational assessment and training series, or VATS for short, for individuals with ASD ages 14 to 21. The series will consist of 12 classroom-based sessions and 6 community-based sessions for up to 10 participants, and will include skill training for resume building with cover letter and assessment of job attributes that are good fit as well as those that are not, where to look for employment, a list of possible challenges and solution strategies to ensure success, and mock interview practice. We will also host 4 family trainings, 1 in each town: Berlin, New Britain, Plainville, and Southington. Families of the young adults on the spectrum will learn how to support their family member in job searching, acquiring, and most importantly, maintaining a job. VATS is created around the evidence-based practices of applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, which has an impressive outcome data mechanisms and is used countrywide to support those on the autism spectrum. You should have a handout which has a list of the researched, backed, evidence-based practices that we will utilize in our program. ABA has been included not only for its proven effectiveness as an evidence-based treatment for individuals with ASD and other developmental disabilities, but also for its adaptability to a wide range of individual needs and contexts. Evaluation of program effectiveness will begin with the identified participants and their families participating in an intake assessment process prior to the beginning of the program. Program staff will record data on observable target skills that participants demonstrate during the course and activities of the training program. This data will be analyzed and compared to the initial baseline data in order to show progress. Using the intake data, the team will then create a personalized work profile to determine the participants' ideal work placement and the reasonable accommodations that they may require for success. Program staff will perform follow-up interviews with participants and families to assess retention and application of learned skills. These interviews will occur at 1 month, 6 months, and 1 year after completion of this training program. The VATS team will consist of a program manager, direct instructional staff, ASRC staff, and a consulting board-certified behavioral analyst. The duties of each of these are outlined in the proposal. The program manager has 11 years experience working with individuals with ASD and now runs an LLC providing vocational skill coaching and advocacy. Our direct instructional staff will be hired under the supervision of ASRC and the program manager. Qualified candidate credentials could include registered behavioral technicians, qualified paraeducators, and students seeking advanced degrees in applied behavioral analysis, special education, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. All of our staff will have experience working with young adults and teens in the autism population. The board-certified behavior analyst will be responsible for providing consultation and guidance to the program manager to ensure that the goals and data systems are effective. And ASRC staff with over 40 years' experience in the autism field will lead this program and work very closely with the team. Team members will focus on promoting the strengths of those they serve while providing the tools and support for challenges to be mitigated and managed. This team will design and deliver a structured program driven by evidence practices in order to create a meaningful resource for program participants as they pursue fulfilling and competitive employment. We will identify potential participants in Berlin, Southington, New Britain, and Plainville. And the impact benefits of this program will include connection of participants and their families to typical peers, providing a social and support network in the communities where they live. Additional impact benefits will include the vocational support trainings to the families in each of the 4 towns. There'll be 1 workshop in each town. Each workshop will be 2 hours. We will open the family workshops up not only to the participant families in VATS, but we will also open it up to families in those towns. The impact on each community is twofold. The individuals participating in the program will have a direct impact in the communities where they live, and families of the participants will receive valuable information about how to support their loved one in the vocational arena. The outcome goals will vary depending on initial assessments, but could include improvement of basic skills, profile enhancement, which includes the resume and cover letter, interview practice, and skill development. We will verify participant outcomes through the personalized work profile as mentioned previously, and that will determine the participant's ideal work placement and the reasonable accommodations that they may require for success. Are you standing up or are you just eating? No, sorry.
You have a little signal going on.
Yeah,
But yes.
so that's not it. She's just grabbing some food. All right. The total cost of the budget proposal is $9,750. Requested funding will be used to create the vocational assessment and training series, and that includes the 12 classroom-based sessions and 6 community-based sessions for up to 10 participants, supervision of staff, staff training, ASRC oversight, and the 4 2-hour trainings for families of young adults on the spectrum in Berlin, New Britain, Plainville, and Southington. ASRC plans to replicate VATS with 3 locations across the state. ASRC will look to partner with public school systems and professionals, including psychologists, BCBAs, and other service providers to roll out VATS in alternative locations. And we thank the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain for choosing our program as a finalist in the Catalyst Fund, and we appreciate the opportunity to present to you this evening.
So we thank Leslie for her presentation. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I was hoping you could give a little more information on how you would be selecting these participants.
So the question is, how will the agency be selecting these participants?
So our program manager's in the audience, so is it possible for her to come up and answer those questions, or is that not allowed? Is that okay?
I believe it's allowed.
All right, Jen. She's my clinician. She's the one I asked to. But for starters, so I know a little bit about this. We will be advertising and reaching out to local communities in those 4 towns, school systems, therapists, psychologists, OT, PT, speech, all the professional groups that we normally work with very closely, as well as, you can finish up that statement.
Well, ASRC does have, there's quite a network of individuals that really all need this.
Take the microphone.
Oh, sorry. ASRC is involved with a lot of individuals across the state that would be a good fit for this program. So we would have a little bit of an application process, and we would determine who could benefit the most. This is only 10 people, so it would be a little bit of a first come, first serve, of course. But it would be those that have the aptitude for employment and are also in need of those services.
Thank you. Yes, back table, please. Corey.
So you say across the state, but would you focus only on those that would be candidates within our 4 towns that we serve?
The question is, would we be focusing on the candidates that would be part of our 4 towns, the area?
Yes, our focus are these 4 towns. I think what Jen was also indicating, though, is that ASRC's network is large, and so we are able to tap into resources that are already in those towns, as well as maybe some other towns. I really anticipate once this program is launched that we're going to get folks asking to be in it that are not in those 4 towns, and that we'll have to sort of jump off that bridge when we get there, but not for this part of the program.
Question in the back table, yes.
Can you clarify your 6 community-based hands-on sections and how you plan on continuing your program?
Clarification of the 6 community-based sessions and how to continue them.
I'll do the how to continue them part. So ASRC is committed to doing this program. We're looking for additional either other funding, some appeals, very targeted asks for funding for this program, and we are going to do this program no matter what. I mean, we have to. I mean, as I mentioned before, we're at a really dramatic tipping point in Connecticut when it comes to autism services, especially for this population. And what's so important is that this population, the 70 and over, are so able to work. They just need that support and that coaching. And they can go on to become very participating members of their community, taxpayers, really involved in their jobs, but they just need that little support. And I'll have Jen answer the 70 over is the IQ that I spoke of earlier. And Jen has to answer the 6 communities.
And the 6 community sessions would be, we would connect with some local businesses or agencies, and we would get together some group volunteer projects for the participants to go out and participate in.
Yes, Joy.
So I see that you're headquartered in Wallingford. Would the 10 participants, once they're selected, need to then travel to your location in Wallingford? And have you given any thought to potential transportation concerns and issues?
The question was the 10 participants, would they be traveling to Wallingford? And if so, is there a consideration for transportation issues?
We are looking, and we have one site almost 100% secured. We're waiting to find out on the award, obviously, that we have a spot in Southington, and we have a potential spot in New Britain where we would be operating out of. So we plan to actually be providing services in the towns. Probably not each 4 towns. We probably have one location either in Southington or New Britain or both. And so transportation had not come up before, but we should probably think about that, because even if you live in Berlin, how do you get to Southington, right? So I do have to consider that, and I had not.
Yes, the particular.
I was wondering, is the federal government responsible for any money toward this type of project on the federal level to our state and our communities?
Question was,
Department of Education.
is the federal government, specifically the Department of Education, responsible for any of the funds to provide for these clients?
So that could take me about half an hour to answer, but I'm going to try really hard to condense it. So I guess, so the Department of Education is responsible for providing the transition services in the school system until they age out. And for those that don't know, kids with disabilities through IDEA are able to stay in the school system until they age out at 21 or /22. They don't kick you out if you turn 22 in January. So yes, there is some of that. And then we do have a vocational agency that receives federal dollars. It's the Department of Rehabilitative Services, or DOORS. And specifically in that program, they have the Bureau of Rehabilitative Services. Unfortunately, the state criteria state that in order for BRS to accept an individual into their vocational program, they have to be work ready. And so unfortunately, kids are aging out of the school system not work ready without these types of vocational programs. And so oftentimes BRS is not able to support the individuals in a vocational way because they're showing up completely without any of the basic skills they need, like interviewing and a resume and all of that. They're showing up without that, and without that, technically you're not supposed to be able to provide services.
Has the state of Connecticut ever approached the federal government to let you get to what we're dealing with in our own state, never mind the whole country?
So the question was, has the state of Connecticut ever approached the federal government?
Over the years, I'm sure they have. Our federal government is struggling as well, and a lot of these dollars come out of Medicaid funding, and that's being cut on a national level. And the Voc Rehab Act, which is a special bill that got passed, I think it was back in the 90s, was it, Andrew? I don't know, if I don't remember when it was passed, but that's supposed to have that funding too attached to it. But our program, just like everything else, is getting cut. So, and it's not 100% federal dollars, it's state and federal. And so if the state gets cut and the federal is getting cut, their resources are shrinking as well.
So one more question, and then we'll have our next presenter. Dave? Yes? Dave? Oh, Mark, sorry,
Yeah,
Mark.
no, that's okay. There's in the budget, there's a line item that's referenced as general supervision. Can you define that?
The question was, can we find the general supervision line in the budget proposal?
I don't have a copy of that in front of me. I believe, though, that is the ASRC supervision that I spoke about, that having our staff who have all this experience in the field will be helping to supervise. But I could look at the, I just didn't look at.
Staff direction.
I'm sorry, I don't have.
Within the proposal, it says staff direction.
Within the proposal on the budget?
$35 an hour.
It falls under the supervision headline, and it says general supervision session, semicolon, staff direction.
Is that the supervision of the direct staff? So that would be the supervision of the direct staff that are going to actually be working with the individuals.
I'm sure there's other questions, and at the end of the evening, we'll have lots of time for those questions. Thank you. Our second presenter, Ann Ruette, she's the Chief Executive Officer for CCARC. CCARC is seeking funding to offer a series of workshops that will present information especially relevant for families as they prepare to transition their child with ASD beyond secondary education. Workshops would be led by experts in the field of autism, as well as representatives from state and local organizations who can help address accessing critical services and support. Ann?
I know I'm looking at a very friendly crowd here. I come with very strong roots in New Britain, and I say I, but really CCARC. We actually have been involved in the New Britain community since 1952. We were started by a group of parents who really at that time, I always tell my staff, imagine a black and white TV, and they can't. So just no. So in 1952, there were no services, and those parents with the courageous tenacity to really work together and say, okay, we are going to pull together and form a 501c3. So that's our roots, based in New Britain. We actually serve the greater central Connecticut area. We have group homes both in New Britain, Berlin, Bristol, and Plainville. So I talk about those roots because it's important. One of the things we learned over the years is that there are families that really, once their child reaches the age of 21, they don't know where to go. They don't know the resources. We operate a program right here on Slater Road. If you haven't seen us, we're right in the same Mountain View Park as Stanley Works. It's a 22,000 square foot building. We receive individuals on a daily, 150 individuals on a daily basis that are 21 years and older. So we know what it's like for families when they leave the school system and have nothing. And when I say nothing, they don't know where to go. They don't know how to navigate. So the intent of our proposal is to really help them with that navigation. So we got together and we said, okay, what do we do best? And I think what we do best is the provision of services, but we also are good at collaboration. So we want to work with those individuals that have those resources within our community that know more than we do. The school systems, whether it be Plainville, New Britain, Berlin, West Hartford, all of which are providing supports to individuals until they reach the age of 21. And then the families come out. So we want to catch them during that period of time when they can navigate the system easier. So we want to provide a series of workshops, bringing all of those players, all of those resources to the table, and provide that information to families. We will gather from the school districts within our communities, those families who are looking to navigate that trail. And invite them to workshops. We have, in your packet, you'll see a series of workshops that we're proposing. We've worked with Dr. John Moltini, who actually has been an incredible resource for our employee training. We not only provide our day services on Slater Road, we also have 11 group homes within the community. And those homes are accepting individuals primarily with any kind of disability, but primarily with intellectual disabilities. I guess I should share a little bit about who I am. I've been with the organization for 24 years, but prior to that, I worked in an agency in California called the J. Nolan Center. For 9 years, I worked primarily with individuals and their families with a disability of autism. And in those days, I hate to go backwards, there was no spectrum. Basically, there were individuals that were within the school system from the age of 4 on through adults. Our charge was to try and find them support after those hours of education and on the weekends to provide respite. So we know that, I guess from my own experience, I know that families are really at a loss, at the time that they graduate. No matter how well our school systems do, and I know we have wonderful Plainville school system here as well as New Britain, it's just not enough. They come to us as a referral through the Department of Developmental Services with a lot of confusion. So they come in and they think, well, I'm entitled, aren't I, for some services? And they are not. Once they reach the age of 21, that entitlement disappears. So our charge through these workshops is really to try and educate them in terms of what is available, what kind of advocacy do they need to do early on in those years to have a good transition into adulthood for their son or daughter. So we know we have the experience. We also know that we have the vision in terms of what people can do within the community. We want as much as possible for individuals to stay at home with their families until they cannot. Therefore, we provide the residential supports. So who are we? We have a mission to make dreams happen and a vision to provide the individualized services to people with disabilities. But we also have a large charge to ensure that families know and understand what services are available to them. So this workshop, a series of workshops that I think is fairly simplistic approach to really gather that information together, collaborate and coordinate with other resources within our community to provide that information to families. And Jolene hasn't even stood up yet, so I know I have more time. All right, did I answer all the questions, Jolene? The outcome actually is simple. To me, the outcome is that you now have a set of parents that really have more information than they did prior to the workshops. If you look at the list of providers, Dr. Moltini's on the top of the list. I didn't know that he actually accelerated the interest in this grant proposal, but he is an incredible resource to us through the Hospital for Special Care. Are there any questions?
Facilitate.
Usually I can talk on and on, but tonight it's like, okay, I'm looking at these friendly faces who already know who we are.
Yes, Maria.
And how many people do you expect to have
Okay. So the question was, how many people are you expecting to attend these workshops?
We have a capacity in our agency here on Slater Road. We have a boardroom that has a capacity of about 25. I think that's a good number, but if in fact we ended up with a larger number of families interested in these workshops, we work very closely with Stanley. We've had events here. This is a great room. So I would say there's no limit.
I have a question. So my question would be, how do you communicate these workshops other than school systems? Where else can we, in doctor's office or agencies, where else do we go to communicate this information?
Well, I think the school systems is our best resource in terms of getting flyers out. We've worked with other director of special services within New Britain and Berlin and West Hartford, so we know that we could reach out to the schools. We are really all about media. We have had the opportunity to do a few cable shows. I have one of my parents who actually has a son with autism who was at the Hagashi School in the Boston area, who we now support in our day and residential services. We say she and I go on the road. So it is our way to sort of market who we are, what our mission is, and what services are available. So I would think this would be a great topic for one of those.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, Corey.
Are you thinking that people that sign up to attend these workshops need to be the same people that attend all of them, or will you make it open-ended so that some people may choose to attend 4 out of the 9 or all 9? Will it be flexible?
So the question is, regarding these workshops, should the attendance be flexible? Can you see people coming maybe to 4 out of the 9 workshops or all of them? How are we going to address that?
I think that's a good question. I think it has to have flexibility. There may be one family member who has really no knowledge of the BRS system, which I know Leslie had mentioned. How do I get into that service? They may not have any knowledge necessarily of the inpatient or outpatient services at Hospital for Special Care for children with autism. So to me, it should be open. And I'm glad you asked that because we didn't identify that in the proposal.
Any other questions? Yes.
Can you speak a bit about when you are planning to schedule these events in order to have the greatest level of accessibility for parents?
Okay. The question was the accessibility for parents in terms of scheduling these events.
Well, I guess at the announcement of the award, we would then begin our planning. But we do want to make sure we capture families that are within the school year, not catch them as they're going into their summer months. But I would think that during the school year would be the best time to offer them. Evening. Yeah. One of the things that we did build into the proposal is to support their son or daughter with autism while they're attending those workshops. We offer within our agency a peers program, which is already integrated into our group of services, and we would ensure that those individuals were watched while they were, the parents were being educated.
Any other questions? Thank you, Anne. Sorry, one more.
How will you measure, or how do you measure the impact of these workshops, and how do you decide which workshops to put on?
The question was, how do you measure the impact of the workshops, and how do you determine what workshops would be most of interest to parents and guardians?
Is that correct?
Yes.
So we would, after each workshop, we do an evaluation. But we also want a survey. These were just a suggested list of topics. There may be topics beyond this that we hadn't even began to look at. So what we provided in the proposal was what we thought would be good topics. But I think what's important is to survey parents to say, these topics are more important than others. So it may be that we have a list of 10, and only 4 of them through the survey have any interest in those families. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. presenter of the night is Christina Kiley, a behavior analyst and instructional leader for special education for the Plainville Community Schools. She will discuss a proposal to expand vocational training and employment opportunities for students with ASD that are ages 14 through 18, with a focus on parent education and training to help their children meet the demands of adulthood. Christina?
Good evening. I'm Christina Kiley, and as she mentioned, I am a board certified and licensed behavior analyst for Plainville Community Schools. And I just want to put it out there, I am a product of Dr. John Malteni through the University of St. Joseph. He was my professor and now mentor. And today I am absolutely thrilled to be here, and thank you to the Community Foundation for inviting us here. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about our Plainville Community Schools Transition Program. This program was developed and created for students with significant developmental disabilities, including those with autism spectrum disorders. We have partnered with local businesses and organizations to provide our students with opportunities to generalize the skills that they have been learning throughout their school career. And with generalization, we're looking at, can they take their social skills, communication skills, and independent living skills, and can they do them across people, across different settings, and across different materials? And with that, will they be prepared for adulthood? Close to 100% of our families and caregivers have reported that post-school employment and community participation activities is not only hard to obtain, but it's especially hard to maintain and sustain. Our program, our transition program, is a new initiative that began in January of 2018, so this year, to address that need for our families and caregivers. The purpose of our program is to expand our supported vocational and employment opportunities for our young adults. The major focus for our program is on parent education and training to support that school, home, and community partnership. And by doing so, again, students are able to generalize those skills that they have been working on. This program was developed for our students who are 18 to 21, very much like one of the participants that's currently in our program named Abby. Of course, I changed the name to protect confidentiality, but let me tell you about Abby. So in elementary school, Abby was described as someone who was extremely unfocused and inattentive. At times, she was described as being in her own world or out of touch with reality. She had difficulty with organization and just going through the simple routines of the school day, lining up, putting her backpack away. She had poor social skills and she had a long response time. So she would respond, sometimes it would be 30 seconds. So imagine being on the playground, a child comes up to Abby and says, "Will you play with me?" 30 seconds goes by, we know where that peer is. She's off on the slide. I'm saying, "Abby, do you want to go on the slide or play with the hula hoops?" With that response time. So that was isolating for her. In middle school, she was described as having difficulty maintaining attention to her task and starting those tasks. And she was what we describe as prompt dependent. So an adult would be there and say, "Here's step 1, now here's step 2, here's step 3. At the beginning, and she also engaged in some atypical behaviors. So Abby would carry around this little lizard, and sometimes it was a rubber lizard, and sometimes she would talk to this lizard. In high school, she was described as having a negative perception of situations and had difficulty with problem solving. Yes, Abby has autism spectrum disorder. And like so many times we see with individuals with autism spectrum disorder, she has comorbid diagnoses as well as autism and depression. Fast forward to June of 2018 when Abby graduated from our high school program at the age of 18. At that point, Abby was described as someone who was able to problem solve, showed great effort, and was able to sustain her attention to tasks. She had joined our unified sports team, and on our unified sports team, she had friends and people that she identified with as having friends. And you could see that because on the court, she would go and play with these children, and she would gravitate towards them. Abby had a lot of robust interventions throughout her school career in Plainville, including counseling services for self-regulation, including social skills programming, and not just how to have conversations, but how do you put all these skills together quickly and in the moment. That was the foundation for her for what she was about to enroll in as she enrolled in our transition program this fall. As part of our program, we're here to expand students' perceptions about what they can do beyond their own belief. As we often hear, individuals with autism spectrum disorder have restricted interests. For Abby, that was animals and dogs. And for the longest time, whoever would listen, she would say, I'm going to be a dog groomer. And so if I'm going to go into the transition program, I have to be a dog groomer, and I'm not going to be able to do anything else. While Plainville Community Schools is looking for a dog grooming placement, we have started hearing some other vocational placements. And now being into week 3 of our school year, Abby is employed at Walgreens with a job coach with support there to teach her, again, to generalize those skills in Plainville. She's also has at a job site, Nazzo's grocery store, which is also in Plainville. That child who was described as being in her own world and out of touch with reality is now a vital asset to 2 of our preschool classrooms at Linden Street Elementary School in Plainville, where she works as an assistant to 2 different preschool teachers. On Tuesday this week, I was able to go and observe Abby working in our preschool program. I walked in there on Tuesday, and Abby was working on a clerical job, and she was hole punching paper. So she had her stack of papers and she was punching holes. And I don't know how many of you have been in a preschool classroom. It's a little chaotic with 4-year-olds and some 3-year-olds. And it was a transition time from centers where they were playing and they were going over to the carpet. And so that was going on. And then you also had this little 4-year-old girl who had been off to the side. She was sitting on some cushions. She was crying because she was missing her mother. The teacher had already worked with her. Despite all of that chaos, Abby was completely focused on her job and completing that clerical task, which was really important for that teacher to get those materials done, because we also know preschool teachers are really busy. I was able to go back in and observe her again. This time it was during play centers, and Abby was working with that child who was crying because she was missing her mom. They were at the science table looking at rocks and making comparisons. And Abby, who took 30 seconds to respond in elementary school, had this continuous flow of engagement and smiling back and forth with that child. And even at one point, she got up and was animated and put her arms up to show just how the description of the rocks. That 4-year-old who had been crying previously had that same demeanor, and as they went back and forth. I have to share one more quick preschool story about Abby, just to show how the interventions that she has had in Plainville Community Schools now has the opportunity to apply them in a real-life work setting with the support of a job coach and a team of people collaborating with that job coach, including our transition coordinator. Last week, so this was week 2, Abby was in that preschool classroom and she wasn't feeling well. Again, in preschool, there's a lot of germs. It's the 2nd week of school, so a lot of people weren't feeling well. Abby identified that she had a problem. She advocated for herself by going to that job coach to say, I'm not feeling well. The job coach then assisted her and showed her the next solution to her problem. So solution 1 was that she told him, and then solution 2, that they went over and went to the nurse. They were in a school, so there was a nurse there. The nurse deemed that she should go home. So Abby, who has been working on problem solving and finding multiple solutions, executed that flawlessly in a new setting with new adults in a new building, and it worked. So that's the opportunities that we're creating. And I forgot to mention, there's one other quick thing. When she go back to the hole punching, the job coach was not standing right next to her. The job coach was off to the side, and when he did his check-in, he gave her some feedback. And he said, oh, instead of having this stack of paper, why don't you try 2 or 3 at a time? It'll go much faster. Abby acknowledged the feedback, she accepted it, and she applied it immediately. I work with a lot of adults. Not always accept feedback the first time, nevertheless apply it. So I had to share that too. Our proposal meets the request for proposal criteria because this program is designed specifically for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. Through our community partnerships, we're able to focus on vocational training, independent living skills like self-advocacy, what Abby did, and community-based skills because they're embedded right into our program. Parent education and training is a key component of what we do in our program. Imagine having experts brought in to coach our parents to be the coaches for these individuals on the spectrum. And so when that individual is having a hard time getting dressed in the morning, planning breakfast, the parent comes in and says, what is your plan? What executive functioning skills do we need to put in there? So instead of us saying step 1, step 2, step 3, that individual now, because they've had that training, now we're coaching the families on how to help their young adult figure this out for themselves and continue to work on problem solving. And also, with our experts coming in for parent training, we can help the parents with some behavioral strategies as well, because let's face it, everyone has a bumpy day once in a while, or doesn't want to go to work in the morning. So then our parents are empowered to be able to implement the same accommodations and strategies and tools, because we're providing that training as part of this. This community-based program allows our students to be productive members in their own town. It gives our students a purpose and goals to achieve. It also lightens the economic burden on our parents and caregivers, because if these young adults are independent and they're able to generate some income, that helps them to contribute in some ways. The town benefits from this increased engagement of their citizens. And some economic benefits are, if you live in Plainville and you work in Plainville, you're more than likely to buy products in Plainville. So therefore, these young adults are actually supporting the businesses. And lastly, our young adults then become a reliable source of labor for our local businesses in Plainville. Currently, we have 5 students enrolled in our program, and you'll see on your handout what some of those other locations are and some of the other types of jobs that we have access to for our students. We have 4 job coaches and 1 transition coach. And by expanding our program beyond just this 1 year, we'll be able to create sustainable employment right within our community. And we're hoping to do this for 25 to 30 more students and families with a 100% success rate. More importantly, our students will have experienced outcomes beyond what they thought was even possible. So often we hear that individuals on the spectrum don't want to do something, or they're not motivated to do something, when in reality, they either haven't had the experience or exposure to that new situation, or they haven't had the support to be able to use their skills there. In week 2, Abby has already found her passion of working with youngsters. And she was reluctant to enroll with our transition program because, again, we didn't have a dog grooming placement for her just yet. And again, because these children have come through our system, our job coaches are starting ahead of the game. We're not having to train them, or they're not having to get to know these individuals. That toolbox is already given to them. So those accommodations and knowing, so even Abby's job coach, he knew he could step back from this task because we've already given him that background information there. And Abby now is confident and productive already, only in week 3. She's been able to take direction from her job coach. She's working on her social skills, not only with the youngsters, but also with the adults, taking directions from the teachers there, taking direction when she's at Walgreens or Nazo's. We hope to use the monies to expand our program to create these types of meaningful experiences for other students. Regular progress monitoring for this program will be taken through formal and informal data collection. We will also have survey data for our parents and caregivers who come through for our training. And we hope to use that data to continue to grow and individualize these job placements for our students. The requested funds of $10,000 would be allocated for the expansion of our program, and the funds would be divided into 7 categories, from curriculum and program development and materials to our staff training and coaching, and especially for, again, that parent training piece of it, and also just the expansion of which sites we're in. Our parent sessions would have at least 4 sessions throughout the year. And again, I want to thank the Community Foundation. And at this time, I'm going to invite our Director of Special Services, Vicki Trzynski, and Leanne Gamino, our Supervisor of Special Services, for the question and answer piece. Thank you.
This is Vicki Trzynski. She is the Coordinator of Special Education, Director of Special Services, and Leanne Gamino, and Supervisor. So we will entertain questions, please. Yes.
Could you describe how a job coach works with the participant? Are they there 100% of the time? Does it change as the months go by?
So the question was, would you describe the position of a job coach? What is their role, and are they there 100% of the time?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. So I can answer that question for you. We have a number of job coaches, as you've seen on our handout. Initially, what we do is we have the job coach go to whatever the employer is. So if it's NASOS, we have them go out there, Walgreens, etc. They take a look and they speak with the manager, whoever is kind of the supervisor on site, and find out what is the typical job. What does it look like to work at NASOS? What does it look like to work at Walgreens? Then they'll come back and meet with me, and we'll talk about what is the most appropriate job within that site for our students. So for example, let's say if it's Walgreens, they might say, well, it's stocking, it's matching, ISBN codes, it's unpacking whatever the products are, stocking the shelves, maybe making a display, greeting customers, maybe helping someone find the Band-Aids or whatever it might be. So then we look at our students, and this is kind of how we started, so this might answer other questions as well, and said, okay, we think that this student might be the best fit at Walgreens. This other student might be a better fit at Zaxby's Pizza because maybe they have more communication skills and can interact with folks more. So it's more about interviewing the employers or the job sites. I would say our students are not paid. So when I say employers, our students are not getting paid for this. You understand as part of their transition program. But then we kind of try to match it up based on the skill set that that site needs or where they're willing to let our students work and learn that skill set for a potential job down the road. So does that answer your question?
That answers a lot of it.
Okay.
So once the student is actually working there,
yes.
Is the coach on site with them?
Yes.
And all the time?
Yes.
Part of the time?
Every day, yes, within the entire duration. And what we do, we have a rotating schedule. So say on Monday, I might go to Walgreens. On Tuesday, I might be at Linden Street School. On Wednesday, I might be at the Plainville Library. On Thursday, I might be at the Municipal Center. And on Friday, I might do a little bit of pre-K because I don't like those guys. And then maybe I'll go back to Walgreens. And so we have different schedules for the 5 students that we currently have in the program, and we switch it up. So the employers that we currently are working with, they have one of our students every day. If you can kind of picture that rotating type of schedule. And then the job coaches go with the students. And at first, sometimes for, depends on the severity of our student's disability, it might be quite hand over hand. Like you take it from the box and you put it on the shelf, you match the number, and a lot of repetition so our students can learn that skill. And then it's slowly fading that because the goal is for sustainable, independent employment for our students And another person had mentioned earlier that gap after this, students turn 21. They could get all the best training in the world, but if our parents don't have the education on how to advocate for their children after that point, that's really where the parent training piece comes into our grant proposal. So while we have the students, we can do all this job training, and I'm very, very proud and excited to share that piece with you because it's new and it's working. So that to me is wonderful in and of itself. But that next layer and the next step is to educate parents, and that's really the piece of the program where we're really looking for that funding. So when the students leave Plainville and they get that Plainville diploma and off they go, they are still going to be set as adults, and that's really what the aim and the goal is.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our three presenters. I think they have given us a lot of information to think about, to process. And in light of processing, if you think of a question when you get home or you're reading through materials, really shoot an email to Jolene. She's very good about getting back to you or to us to determine where we're going to go with this. For me, this is a very difficult decision because you hear all three presenters and you think there's such a need out there, and I wish we had lots of money to give to everyone. So I thank all of you. So any other questions for any of the presenters? So Dave, I will hand the evening back to you.
Okay, it's my job to close this, so here goes. Thank you to all for being here tonight, especially our members, our visitors, and especially our presenters this evening. And I want to say too, right off the bat, Jolene and I, we were just like floored. The quality and the frequency of the questions right off the bat from everybody was really wonderful tonight. And we really appreciate that insight on your part in really taking a deep dive into the materials and the presentations. Just shows how much this means to you and how much we appreciate you being part of the process here. Catalyst members are encouraged in the future to bring friends, family, anyone interested in our program to any of our meetings, especially the next one, so they can experience the process, possibly sign on as a member for the next year. Oh, and by the way, if we haven't mentioned it, Linda and I wanted to mention too that Kate says hello. For all of you who know our daughter Kate, who before she went off to college was involved with Catalyst for, I don't know, 8 or so years, and was also a tri-chair with us when we were volunteers with Catalyst. We talked to her last night. She's up at Emerson, and she said to say hello to everyone. So, thank you. Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 8th. It's going to take place at Shuttle Meadow Country Club. And our presenters will also be available to answer questions before we take a vote that evening. Last year's grant award recipient to the Plainville Community Schools will have a representative from Plainville there to talk about the grant for a part-time job coach in their alternative learning center. So it'll be great to hear from them on how that grant was spent this year. Something new we'll also be doing at our final meeting is giving those present at the final meeting, I'm sure you're all going to be there, an opportunity to weigh in on potential topics for our 2019 program. We haven't really done it that way before, but we thought this might be a good way to kick off what's going to happen in the next year. And so think about topics and areas that you think should be brought to the forefront for that, and we'll come up with a format and a way in which we can talk about that during part of that meeting. Also at the November meeting, we will review the 3 proposals that you heard about tonight. We'll have a facilitated discussion on the merits of each. And following the discussion period, we will vote to award a $10,000 grant. Now, if you have any other additional questions or remarks between now and the November meeting, Jolene Ruck, who has wonderfully organized everything tonight. Thank you, Jolene. She is available, so talk to her, don't talk to me, just tell her. The Community Foundation, I'm going to take a 30-second commercial right now because I got you all right here, and we fed you. But the Community Foundation is also more than Catalyst, and we just like to let people know who may not be aware that our foundation is made up of a number of different programs, a number of different initiatives, and if anybody here has any interest in anything about, I'm going to say next, please let us know, talk to us about it, and my business cards are sitting on that table if you want to take one with you and call me at another time. But we are all about donor advised funds that people start with us with a very low minimum of just $5,000, where you can help decide every year where the earnings on those funds are going to go to any nonprofit organization in the United States. We are about scholarships that are given out each year. We're about field of interest funds. If you don't want to make the decision about where the money goes, we can make sure it goes to arts and culture, education, health and human services, economic development. We'll help with that in any way that we can. We're about initiatives, not just early childhood education, which we've been famously working on for the last 13 years. I saw that whoop Joanne, very nice. But also bringing to the forefront new initiatives like disaster preparedness. What is the role of a community foundation if this area was to be hit with a natural disaster? We're working on that currently because we want to be prepared. We want to play the role that we need to play, like Houston and Florida and so many other community foundations need to play when those areas are hit and ravaged by natural disasters, obviously at a more frequent pace than we are in the Northeast. But if it does happen, we want to be prepared for that and do the right thing. We're also working on nonprofit capacity building and helping those small to medium-sized nonprofits that need a little help, need a little training in finance, board development, fundraising, public relations. Some of those areas they might be weak, to help them be stronger, because when all of those nonprofits are stronger in the community, it lifts the entire community up, and that's a good thing for everybody. So we've also dedicated part of our office at 74 Vine Street as a nonprofit resource center, where any nonprofit can come in, and there are books and volumes that they can borrow instead of having to purchase. There's a nonprofit online foundation center resource that would cost thousands of dollars for any nonprofit to have. But we pay that bill, and we let those nonprofits come in, use that site, and look up other foundations that they can apply to for grants in their particular area. So that is available, no charge, to any nonprofit that wants to use it. Just call Jolene and she can set up the appointment to use that online directory. So we are all those things and more, and now we're also establishing a Young Philanthropy Initiative and doing more in the community to educate our younger people about the importance of philanthropy in our community. We need to let the younger generations know what it means not only to do FundMe pages and that kind of online fundraising, which can have a very narrow focus sometimes on certain things, but to understand that there are community foundations and other organizations that they can connect to and become part of something bigger, something greater in their community. On October 9th, there will be an event at the East Side Restaurant that the Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring, and the Community Foundation is a sponsor of that event to encourage our younger alumni to come out and talk about and learn about the other nonprofit organizations that are in their community. So thank you for being part of this, but know there's so much more, and we'd love to talk to you about it. If you have any interest in anything that we've talked about, talk to myself, talk to Jolene, any of our staff. Ann Bova is here. She's a consultant who works with us on donor advised funds and other projects too. Ann can also help answer any questions on that for you. So leave your name tags by the door in the box. My business cards are there if you would like one. And I think I have covered, Jolene, have I got everything? We got everything taken care of? My script, I got a blank page now, so I think I've got it to the end. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for being here.